Ladies and gentlemen, dames en heren, welcome at this smart talk on responsible consumption for carnivores, how to plantify our food in a way that makes all consumers happy. Welcome to you all. We have some non-Dutch speaking guests here. Welcome to you, and that is the reason why we do this whole session in English. If, however, you feel uncomfortable in English and you want to ask something in Dutch, of course, feel free. Dus als iets onduidelijk is, kan ook, vraag het gewoon even, steek even je hand in de lucht, dan vertalen we het. Dat is allemaal geen enkel probleem. But the rest of this conversation will be in English. My name is Richard, I'll be your host, this is Moderator. It's an interactive session, so if you have a question, if you want to say something, if you want to ask something, just raise your hand. But one thing, wait until you get the microphone, so we can all hear what you say or what you ask. Also, another option over there, that's my telephone number. You can send me a text message, you can send me a WhatsApp message, if that's easier for you, or if you don't want to interrupt any of the speakers or whatever, so you can also use that. This session takes 1.5 hours, so we will have the end of the session at 5:30. And I would like, of course, to welcome you all on behalf of Studium Generale, Saxion International Office, Saxion SDG Werkgroep, the Minor Conscious Business, the Minor Algemene Ontwikkeling, and Deventer for Global Goals. Welcome to you all. And as I said in the title, this is about a smart talk on responsible consumptions for carnivores. Now, in this audience, who would call him or herself a carnivore? Who eats meat about every day, more or less? All right, all right. And who would call him or herself a flexitarian? If you eat meat now and then, you haven't abolished, but you eat it now and then, not every day, okay? Who's a vegetarian? Who would call him or herself a vegetarian? All right. Who would call him or herself a vegan? Okay. And who is not in any of these categories? Or are you all comfortable in one of the categories? Let's just try out how the system works. And you can also send me away. If I'm standing in front of you and say, Richard, no comment, you can also send me away. But I saw you call yourself a flexitarian, is that right?
Yes, I do eat meat, but not every day.
Yeah. And is that a conscious thing, or just you grew into that, or what's the reason?
It's a conscious thing, and when I eat meat, I preferably eat biological meat.
Okay.
So produced in another way.
Okay. So that's the choices you made. Who was one of the carnivores? Who would call him or herself a real carnivore? And you can send me away. I'm just curious. Do you feel comfortable with that title, being called a carnivore?
Yeah, yeah.
And why are you a carnivore? Is that a conscious choice, or just something that your parents raised you in, or you just like meat very much?
My parents don't really like to eat fish, so I wasn't brought up with eating fish. So
there we go.
Yeah, that just made it easy for me.
Just made it easy for you. And how's that for you? What do you call yourself?
Yeah, also carnivores, but I don't know. It's not a conscious thing. It's just I was raised that way. Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you, thank you. And who calls him or herself vegetarian? Again, one of the vegetarians. Are they all gone now? I'm not having a session where carnivores are. Okay, and who calls him or herself vegan? Vegan? Yeah, yeah. And can I ask you the same question? Well, why do you do that?
I think it's irresponsible to eat meat or any non-plant-based food. Yeah.
And how long are you vegan?
I stopped eating meat when I was 15. That was 25 years ago, 26. So I'm 15 years vegan now.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thank you. And we are also talking about how can we plantify our food in a way that makes all consumers happy. Well, we know you are happy with your choice, I guess. If you do, what would be? Of course, we have the whole afternoon to talk about this. But what would be your preliminary answer for now? How can we do that also with making people happy who, for example, say, "Well, I just really like meat."
I think there are some interesting experiments with, like I don't know how you say it, de burgers die ergens wel beginnen bij vlees. Hè? Ik kan even niet op het woord komen, maar insecten misschien wel. En nou, dichter bij huis je vlees vergaren.
So one of the ways, he says, I'll try to translate it, is to find a way of making burgers in a different way. For example, with insects, that would be one of the options. There are probably a lot more options in there. So also we have invited some guests who are going to speak for us. And our first guest, please give her a warm welcome, is Roanne van Voorst. Please welcome us.
Thank you.
Roanne, welcome. And then we also test your microphone in these categories that I just... What category are you in?
Well, nowadays I'm a vegan.
You're a vegan?
Yes. But
And also for about 20 years as this gentleman?
No, I'm a newbie here.
You're new.
Yeah, I became vegan when I was writing my book, Once We Ate Animals, and I was doing a lot of research about the impacts of meat and dairy on climate changes, because that is my job as a researcher, and I was so shocked that I did not dare to eat anymore. But I sometimes still do when I'm field working in a developing country, for example. I work a lot in slums where people have nothing else to eat. Or I used to live with the Inuit in Greenland, where people literally only have the meat to eat, and then I make an exception.
All right, thanks for that. You have 20 minutes for your speech. Everyone, during the speech, you can send me messages, and afterwards we have a discussion.
Perfect.
All right?
Yeah. Well, thanks. This is me when my hair is all done and I'm wearing makeup. This is me normal. Nowadays, they call me an anthropologist of the future, but basically, I'm just an anthropologist, right? I obtained my PhD 5 years ago, and my work has always been on the social impacts of climate changes. So this is one of the neighborhoods where I worked. This is Jakarta, Indonesia, where people are dealing with floods, things that we will soon be dealing with, most likely here in the Netherlands, but they already know how that is. When I was doing the research, I found that climate changes are, for a large part, man-made, human-induced. I think we can all agree about that. 90–70% of the researchers agree about that. And over the past years, it has become clear that meat and dairy, so that's cheese and milk, right, have huge impacts. And some of the researchers, not all of them agree, but most of them now say that it has an equal amount of impact as, for example, flying does, or transport. Now, flying is a bit harder to monitor for yourself, right? I mean, the large majority of flyers in the air are businesses, for example. So that's a bit hard to change for most people, even though you can choose for a train ride on your European holidays. But with eating, it's different. Eating is something that we do every day, and eating has an enormous political impact, because if you decide what you want to eat, you're basically giving a signal to the producers about what you want to eat, about what we're requesting, demanding on our plate. So more and more researchers now say, the IPCC now says, if you want to do one thing for the climate, the best thing you can do is eat less meat and dairy. Now, I'm all for activistic talk if you wish, but that's not what we're going to do today, because I think it's going to be more interesting to have a look at the future and say that we are trying to eat a little bit more plants and a little bit less meat, animals, and milk and dairy. What then shall we eat? And I'm going to introduce a couple of food trends. Say that it was 2030 or 2029, exactly 10 years from now. I want to show you what we might be eating, and I also want to talk a little bit about the impacts that that might have for the way that we look back at what we're doing now, the psychology, the masculinity. You know, we have a lot of images attached to barbecuing and being a real guy and having your steak. What will happen if we're no longer eating steaks, or perhaps a steak made out of crickets, who knows? And I also want to talk a tiny little bit about the work that we do, because especially the Netherlands, we have a lot of dairy farmers. We have a lot of livestock walking around here. So if they no longer can do that work, what will happen to them, right? So I'm going to tell you a couple of stories. Just so you know, per year in the whole world, about 66 billion animals are slaughtered for meat and dairy. So that's only the cows and the pigs. If I would add up the fish, it's 150 billion. Now, also good to know is that the images that you may have of dairy farmers and biological farming and nice family farms, they're not super realistic anymore. So what you see is that, for example, dairy farms or livestock farms where we have cows, we used to have small farms here in the Netherlands. Nowadays, most of them are pretty big, and the cows are producing much more. So, for example, in 1910, an average cow would produce 2,500 liters milk per year. 2010, that was 8,000 per year, right? So the world has changed. We have more people, we eat more, the animals produce more. That's the way we breed them. All right. What I also want you to know is that food trends change all the time. In the Roman period, we liked our exotic animals here. We used to eat giraffes. Middle Ages, people thought that fruits and veggies were not to be eaten because they were very, very unhealthy. So you would basically eat around them, but you wouldn't go there. Now, often if people say, we can't simply eat less cheese here in the Netherlands because it's part of the culture, milk is part of the culture, it always makes me laugh. Because if you look at the history of especially Dutch cooking, and for those of you who don't come from the Netherlands, sorry for the food culture. I know it's not the best kitchen in the world. We're trying to be nice to compensate that or offer you weed and hash so you don't notice. But the real Dutch culture was potatoes. Until Second World War, people ate cheap things like potatoes and grains because we couldn't afford to eat as much meat as we do now. So this massive amount of meat that we eat nowadays is pretty recent. It used to be way too expensive. So here we go, into the future. Trend number 1 is meat coming from laboratories. And this is one of the most, I think, popular, well-seen things that you can see on television now, right? So all over the world, there are laboratories now where they're trying to create meat that either comes from one mini cell that was taken from the blood of a cow, or it comes from something else, like yeast, where they make the hemes taste like blood. Now, a lot of the veggie burgers I know taste like mashed chickpeas, let's be honest. But there are new burgers on the way. Some of you may have tried the Impossible Burger in the US, or the Beyond Burger now also at Albert Heijn's here in the supermarkets. And they're getting towards the real thing. It's harder still to make good alternative cheeses, but they're working on that too. So in 10 years from now, be sure that there will be meat that tastes like meat, and it might even blood like meat. We already have those burgers where you have a bit of the bloody vibe, if you like that, if that's your thing. And it's affordable, and it will be everywhere. So supermarkets managers now often say that they expect in 10 or 15 or 20 years, 80% of their meat will be made out of plants. This is another one. It was already mentioned, I think, by you, right? It's eating insects. I live in the US part of the year, and when I was there in the climbing gym, I tried a chocolate chirp cookie. It was pretty good. Tasted like chocolate chip cookies. Now, the advantage of crickets and other insects is that they have a lot of protein. The disadvantage is that we don't really know how sustainable it's going to be and how much we would need to, have insects covering all the things that we eat now, but they might be a supplement. Number 3, when I was doing the research for my book, Once We Ate Animals, because that covers this topic of the history and the future of eating animals, I was told that I could no longer talk about meat alternatives. Instead, I had to say meat follow-ups or future meats, because it's no longer in the idea of food designers and food producers, it's no longer just an alternative, it's more the future of food. So one of them might be just learning to cook the same type of stuff, but then with new things, or with old things, I should say. So this woman here, Monami Frost. She's a very popular Instagram personality. She's an influencer. And she and her whole family are vegan. And they cook kind of cool, traditional meals, filling meals, hearty meals, but they do it with plants. Now, she's gotten so popular that she has hundreds of thousands of followers who kind of take over their recipes. Most of them are not vegans. Most of them are flexitarians. So they like to experiment with something that tastes and looks like a steak, but apparently was made with mushrooms, for example. Seaweed is another big trend. And if we talk about farmers, and we will talk a bit more about farmers and especially livestock farmers soon, then this is an interesting as well. Because here in the Netherlands, we now have more and more farmers that have seaweed instead of cows. Seaweed has a lot of nutrients, it's very healthy, and as far as we can see now, it's pretty sustainable to get it. And so they make burgers, and they make seaweed bacon. They make seaweed juices, and they make seaweed just to use as kind of spices over your food. Has a lot of good stuff for your body that you would normally get from animal produce. Now, talking about the animal produce and how you would stay healthy when you would eat a little bit less out of that, new research shows that pretty much everything that you need is also available from plants. The only thing that you should probably supplement a little bit just to be sure is B12, which is also available in plants, especially in seaweed, but it's a bit harder for our tummies and systems to get it. And so I take a pill, for example, just to be sure. Other than that, the protein, we don't have a deficiency here in the West. We eat too much protein. In fact, there's hardly any places in the world where people have too less protein, unless people are really hungry. If you have too little to eat, whether you're living in a very poor country or you're anorectic, for example, then you get too little of everything, right? Including protein, including the B vitamins. Now, this is interesting. This is an individual diet that we will probably see more and more, where you will be scored and rated and advised, whether you like it or not, on how healthy your behavior is, your eating behavior. So you can see here, you want to take a coffee, and your computer is warning you that you'll get 2 points less because it's not really good for your health. However, it will give you an instant feeling of bliss, +3 points. There's a processed hamburger there, probably made out of plants, you know, this is the future, which will give you bliss. It will also give you a little bit of energy. It has quite some calories in there. Only -1 point, because if it's made out of plants, it doesn't have as much salt and fat, but it still has the same amount of protein, so it's not really that bad for you, so that's good news. There's a little bit of amphetamines, good for the bliss, I'm guessing, +3 points, very good for the energy, +6 points, nah, for the health. So you can expect that sooner or later, you will see this on your app, and it might be in sort of holograms where you can see it just when you're looking at your food, when you're wearing a Google Glass, or you can use it in the app and it will scan everything for you. Plus point is, you don't really have to think anymore. You can just kind of plus and min your way through the day. Not so nice about it is that you have Siri basically being your mom the whole day and putting it in your face, you know, stuffing you up with information you might just sometimes want to forget. This is instant meal. Has anyone tried that before? I, as part of this research, tried to live on instant meals for a while. Powder meals. So this is not a diet thing. It's not one of those Weight Watchers bars where there's very little calories in there. It actually has enough calories, enough for a third of a meal. So this, one of these bags is a lunch or dinner, and it has 1/3 of all the vitamins, the fats, and the other nutritions you need. It also has enough calories, so you don't feel as if you're being hungry or starved or on a diet. You feel filled up. And it worked quite well. So these are the calories and the vitamins and the minerals, and this one happens to be vegan, but there are also vegetarian ones around. I am still alive, even though I lived on them for a while. I've been following younger people who have been living them on these things for a year. They seem to be alive and kicking. The only thing that I found, it's not super romantic to be with your partner. He's having his lunch or his dinner, and you're sipping a juice. It really made clear to me that if we're going to do this in the future, and a lot of the futurists think that we will, because it's super efficient, right? You can just kind of take it along to school, drink it on the bus, and not only have you eaten enough, you've also eaten healthy, because there's enough of the vitamins for the day. But if we're going to do this for the future, we will lack one thing, and that's interaction. During dinner, because it goes so slow, we have plenty of time to talk about the day, and that's what you won't have if you eat or drink these meals. Looks like this. Now here's a little bit on the future and production. If people tell me it's very, very sad for all these farmers, all these livestock farmers, you know, it's horrible. What are you telling them, to give up their job? I agree. But the fact is, they're already losing their jobs. Not to me or to climate activists, but to robots. It's getting more and more normal to have part of the produce being monitored and raised by robots, right? It's no longer just human beings. And even the protection of your fields will be robotized quite soon. Then I think the ideal or most romantic story that a lot of people tell is, you know what, it's wonderful and nice that we have to eat less animals, but we could still do it in a very circular, romantic, family farming, biological, ecological, whatever there is for a term kind of way. The only problem is that we're now with 7.5 billion people on this earth. In 2030, that will be an estimated 9. And if all those people want to eat as much proteins as what we're doing now, and they want to do that from animals, then this is more of a realistic scenario. This is a so-called pig's flat in China. And China is the first country in the world where they no longer have small-scale farming. They only have industrial farming, because otherwise they can't feed and export enough. And so if we're thinking about 9 billion people, then probably, if they all want to eat their proteins from animals, we have to be honest. It's not going to look like small-scale family farming anymore. Those farmers won't survive. They want to, but they won't survive in an economic system. So instead, we'll have 8 level floors pig shacks. This is one of the farmers that I interviewed. His name is Jay. He lives in the UK, and he used to have 500 cows or so. And then he sold all of them, aside for 20. He still has 20 of them. And he's now still a farmer, but he produces legumes. He thinks that plant-based food is the future, and so he changes his perspective, and he still has his 20 cows for their poo, for the land, and because he really liked them so much. And I think this story goes for most of the farmers. All of the farmers I interviewed, the first chapter is called How Farmers Changed the World. They love their animals. That's why they became farmers, because they love their animals. Only they get stuck in a system where they have to scale up and get more and more animals and have them to create more milk and milk and milk because they're stuck, like consumers feel that they're stuck. We really don't want to do this, all this industrial kind of farming. We want to go with the biological part, but it's hard. So Jay said, you know what, I'll just do legumes. That's another protein-rich source, and that will be my future. And he's doing well, and he's teaching young farmers how they can also shift. This is one of the things that is happening now, guys. We only have 3 vegans here, but we have worldwide an increase of vegan sexuals. Those are people that only want to have sexual relationships or dates with non-vegans. They even have with other vegans, not with non-vegans. They have their own Tinders and their own apps. And it's also because more and more vegans look like this. This is one of the most influential social influencers at the moment. His name is Dom Thompson. He's an ex-jailer, ex-drug dealer, turned vegan, now has hundreds and thousands of followers, all very interested in how he gets his muscles. Well, he says, because I eat what elephants eat. For those of you who don't know, they eat plants. And this is something that I think we should all kind of reconsider for today. From tomorrow onwards, we have climate protests for a week all over the Netherlands. I think tomorrow is going to be in Amsterdam at the Dam Square. And this is something that is getting more and more real, right? There's more and more people around that, not so much because they love animals or because they think it's so sad, but because they're really concerned with the climate. And it's scientists and it's school kids and it's everyone in between. So I think this is the #1 reason why we should, even though meat tastes so good and dairy tastes so good, probably have a bit of a critical look and see what we might do to at least avoid catastrophe. This book will be translated to English and it will be worldwide, but you'll have to wait a year. Now it's only in the Netherlands. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roanne van Voorst. And please stay here on stage, because now it's time for interaction. It's time for all your questions, remarks, things you want to know, or maybe just compliments you want to give, or criticism you want to share.
Compliments, yes.
Compliments or criticism, everything is welcome. You can also send me a wave. I'm just curious. What do you think of the speech of Roanne?
No pressure.
No pressure, indeed. No.
Do you know her, or?
No, I don't know her. No. It was very interesting. Well, that's all I have for now.
Interesting. Yeah, very good. Very good. Interesting speech. How was it for you?
Yeah, also very interesting. A lot of new stuff about the future that I didn't know before. So yeah, enlightening.
Enlightening. It was even enlightening. One might also say that there's also quite an optimistic view in your speech. Oh. And when I heard you, yeah, they switched it back to make it a bit more calm.
Okay.
Your speech is also quite optimistic, and one might say, as being an optimistic, well, if all those laboratorial stuff and everything is going so well, it might just happen without us doing anything. Yeah. You know, it will die out, the same as like cigarettes, you know, it will die out and it will just take a little bit of time. Mm. So yeah. Why is change needed then?
Well, yeah, that's a good one. I think for a part it will happen. For another part, it won't happen until consumers really give a political signal. So what you see now is that with cigarettes, things are changing, but it's going super slow. And we have, you know, many, many deaths along the way. Yep. With the animal industry, there's less time, really. Because climate scientists now say that we have about 8 to 10 years to really stop catastrophe. And so if we want to do things now, then, you know, the industry has to hurry up. Yeah. The industry has to hurry up. Yeah. Is that, in your opinion, the biggest step? Well, that the industry is changing instead of all the consumers? No, I think it goes the other way around. Okay. I think consumers set the way and then the industry will follow.
Yeah.
I think consumers set the way, and then the government will follow, because they basically do what they see consumers do.
There's also a lot of consumers here, of course, and I'm not pointing to anyone, but there was sitting someone just in the back of me. When you showed the insect, he used the Dutch word gadver.
Yeah.
Which means gross. He saw the insects and he was like, oh, I'm not eating insects. This is not my future. It might be yours, but don't look that way. But it was somewhere there,
Well,
what would you say to a person? And I think a lot of us think like that. Really, if you are a carnivore, you think, oh, gadver.
Dude, it tastes like potato chips. Because they put just so many spices in there that it tastes like potato chips. Or chicken, some. But it's not disgusting. I think what will happen, though, firstly, a lot of vegans really don't want to do that, because for them it's animals and they don't want to eat animals for principal reasons. But if you want to, you know, if you're interested, what they do is they probably grind it for a bit, so you won't even recognize it. It's not like you're eating whole insects, the crickets. You can do that. There's more and more cricket restaurants now all over the Netherlands. They're pretty popular. They're fully booked for Christmas.
So at least give it a try.
Yeah,
it
but
might taste different than what you expect.
Most of them it's blended and you won't even notice.
Very good. Thanks. From the audience here.
I think we eat insects in the future, for they have a lot of egg food, and otherwise we didn't want to see them, but you mix them up with Dutch food, frikandel, croquette, or such stuff like that. Then we eat it. Well, the stuff smells good, and it's eating good. I eat them. Yeah, and you can buy them. You can buy them everywhere. But when people said, "Oh, that's the same as pheasant. Pheasant, maybe. Oh, I like it very much, but don't see that. But awfully, I'm angry for that, and awfully, and not. But when you didn't see it, and the real meat.
So it might be a marketing thing that we don't have to show everything, but simply just change it.
Okay, that's what I mean. And but it's very healthy, and it can have a good taste. Yeah. It has originally. It has also a good taste.
Has a good taste. Thank you very much. Yes.
So, in this room, there's a lot of people that are very open towards. Well, I mean, there's people. They're sitting here for a reason, but there's also a lot of people that I know that are not very open to wanting to make this change. How would you want to reach them? Because they won't go to this kind of session.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I try not to only preach for parochie, as it is called, so for the own choir. So one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book, first of all, I am not an activist. Like I always tell people, like probably I'm wearing a pants that was made by some child slave, right? I mean, you can never do things right. I try to do things kind of okay for the climate, but probably I'm making a lot of mistakes. We're all human, so inherent to being human, every step that you take, you're probably doing something wrong for the climate. And I often find there's two groups of people. Either they say, I just like my meat too much, and I'm culturally attached, and I don't want to think about it. And then there's a group of people who say, well, there's no, you know, how can I do it? How can I do it right?
Let's go to the first group.
Yeah.
What will be your strategy? Because that's the question.
Well, I think the strategy for them is to have the fashion changed. If you look at trends, how trends evolve, you don't need 100% of the people to agree with a very unpopular statement to make it popular. You need 3 to 10%, and then it becomes normal, it becomes fashion. And people don't want to lose their meat, but more than that, they don't want to be behind. They don't want to be the weird person out there. So if things become normal, and if it becomes seen as egocentric to not go along with that flow, then suddenly things change. So that might be one kind of way to go about it. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Satisfied with that answer? Yeah, or a follow-up question? Thank you very much. Other questions or other remarks? Anything you want to say to that? What do you think of the speech? And it might also, were you one of, in what category were you?
Flexitarian.
Flexitarian. And does it change your mind and say, oh, maybe I'm going to quit eating meat after all? Or are there other things in the way that you think we should handle first before we get to a 100% vegan world?
I have no idea. I'm not going to change my ways. I just will be bored out of my mind. Yeah. Plus, I'm poor, so I can't afford vegan things.
Right. That might be another argument that you might have heard before. It's quite expensive to be vegan. Yeah, meat might be cheaper.
No, meat is much more expensive. Vegan stuff is, and I'm not saying this to you because it's a very interesting topic. In general? I think, generally speaking, look at plants. It's beans and chickpeas and veggies, you know. That's less expensive than good beef. Yeah. So, I mean, in a lot of the countries where I work, a lot of the developing countries, people are vegan. That's because they cannot afford meat. I think what is expensive, though, is the hipster trendy stuff that you can get around now. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of us like that because it kind of resembles the meat, and then you go to a hipster restaurant and you're like, yeah, I want to try
But this is kind of a paradox then, because on the one hand we need those influencers because they are the 3% trendsetters, but the trend that they are setting is too expensive.
No, I don't think it's too expensive. That would be equally expensive as meat would be, mind you. All right. So that's a veggie burger in a cafeteria will cost you 12 euros. And a meat burger will cost you 12 euros. Yeah. But if you're super poor, well, then your best option is to go with the chickpeas from a can. It costs you 80 cents, you know, and it has the same amount of protein. So I think that's not a very good alternative. Right. However, if you say you're bored out of your mind, that's an important one. Because that means that you have, you know, you probably need some good information about cool eating stuff or nice eating stuff, so you don't have to be bored.
Very good, thanks for that.
Ook in het Nederlands?
Yeah, sure. You do it in Dutch and then we translate the question first.
Ik denk ook dat het te maken heeft dat we niet meer goed weten waar ons eten vandaan komt. En dat ook een rol meespeelt. Van heel veel mensen weten niet van, ja, waar wordt ons eten nou gemaakt? En dat speelt ook mee. Ik denk dat we meer moeten gaan kijken van de jeugd ook mee te betrekken van, hé, waar komt ons eten nou vandaan en wat kost dat nou precies? Ja.
So the question is, where is our food coming from? And he says, I think it would be good if we tell, for example, our children to really see where the food is coming from. What's the origin? How is it made, etc. Would that help?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful, wonderful remark. I think one of the problems now is that it's very hard for us to understand what you're exactly buying, right? And not just because it no longer resembles an animal. What you see lying there is just like a pink piece of I don't know what, but also because they market it in such a way that you think you buy the good stuff. You're like, oh, this looks kind of biological. Yeah. It has a greenish logo on top. But if you go to the factories, you'd be stunned. And I think for chicken, for example, a lot of people think that they buy the good free-range eggs or whatever. Then if you look about how such a free-range thing looks like, it's not even outdoors. It's like a shack where they still, they can walk freely, but that's it. Like they're indoors, they grow up within 8 weeks, they have enough meat to be slaughtered again. You know, it's very different than what most of us would find okay-ish. Yeah. And so I think that's not our fault.
But this is something the producers should change, because apparently they're giving us the wrong marketing, so to say. They're trying to,
for sure. And then at the same time, the more people demand that, for example, by choosing sometimes a plant-based meal over an animal meal, or by consistently asking for these things, or by marching in a climate change protest thing, that all works to give the signal to producers, not because they suddenly become so concerned with the animals, but because they see it's lucrative.
Okay. And then one other final thing, we talked about money, we talk about information. Another thing people might say for still eating meat, it's just convenience.
Yeah,
it's just we have Albert Heijn to go here, the little convenience store. If you're just hungry, I want to have a snack, 90% chance it's something with meat. And I don't check everything. I'm just hungry now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, and that is going to change. The more people vote by choosing for a plant-based thing, the more supermarkets will sell it. But I mean, I always say, it's what I say in my book, basically, is it's interesting that we were all raised with the idea that eating animals is completely normal when it goes for cows and pigs and chickens, but not when it goes for cats and dogs, for example. So we have this very weird distinction where we think that we have to care for some animals. We pay a lot of money if they're ill, and we stay at home when they're not feeling well and all that. Yep. And then with other animals, we're totally fine not doing that. And that's a cultural distinction. And I was raised in that way. Like, it's normal, it's healthy, it's necessary to eat meat. And then only if you dive really deep into the research, you learn it's not super normal. Okay. It's kind of weird how we make the distinction. Why not that animal and why this animal? It's not necessary anymore because you have all the alternatives now, so you can stay equally healthy and fit, but without the animals. And it's just really a cultural habit and nothing more than that. It's not even normal if you compare it to a couple of ages ago, Thanks.
Yeah. And just, what was it something, you showed your telephone to your neighbor, or was it something off topic? I don't know.
That was off topic.
Oh, yeah, well, sorry, no, that could be.
Busted.
Maybe you saw something on the internet. Oh, I want to show you this. Thank you very much for now, but please share in our conversation. Roanne van Voorst, yes. And Charlotte de Wit, if you can sit there. Yeah. And of course, you can still participate in the conversation. Yeah. Our next speaker is Charlotte de Wit. Welcome. Let's see if your microphone is... Yeah.
Yes, now it's working.
And of course, also we're very pleased that you are here. And we were just sitting next to each other, and every now and then you had some remarks that you thought, oh, some things were different than what I think. Are those relevant now, or do you still for?
I don't think they're really relevant. I think food is always very complicated, and different sources can say different things. So within a complicated topic, if you dive into it, you find so many different things. You can always say, oh, you can look at this way, you can look at it this way. So yeah, I really enjoyed the talk. So
okay, yeah, that was the next question. How are you on this talk? But and how is your speech going to follow this speech? So we all sort of know what to expect, and what kind of mindset are you taking us in?
Yeah, well, we were just discussing that people have to vote for a change. They have to buy different products, but this change is going very slowly. And I was trying to find a solution for this, so that's what my talk is going to be about.
Great. Do you need slides?
Yeah. Would be nice.
Good luck.
Because I'm looking at the consumer. We already discussed about it. I don't have to tell any more, I think, about this. We have to change our behavior. There's this news article, and it's saying it will be a huge disaster if we just continue living and doing what we do now. But this article is from 1972. And it shows that we already knew for a long time we had to change, but changing mindsets takes a lot of time. And it's already been told it's going too slowly now, so we have to do something faster than the shift in mind. A lot of people still think meat is an important part of a meal. It's not complete without meat. And we also know that too much processed meat is bad for the environment, but also for our health. It increases chance for cancer, for diabetes, overweight, etc. So there was a survey by nu.nl, and they asked people, do you eat less meat or not? And there were 31% of the people saying, yes, I'm eating less meat. So it's still around 70% of the people not eating less meat, but you can say 1/3, that's quite okay already. But then we look at the numbers about how much meat is being sold. And the amount of meat sold in the last years did not decrease very much. It's kind of less the same. So how is it possible if 1/3 of people is eating less meat, but we're not selling less meat? Well, there are two factors. Scientists think people are really bad at saying what they actually do. They think they do something, but in fact, well, there might be a smaller group eating less meat. And there's an effect that people who eat less eat one day, the next day unconsciously think, oh, I had like a plant-based meal yesterday, I can eat some more meat today. And it's all unconscious. So people don't know they're not eating that much less meat as they think. So there are many people having a really positive attitude towards meat, and a really negative attitudes toward plant-based things. Even the people who are willing to do something for the environment or their health, they still feel they're sacrificing something, even if they're trying. So I was thinking, can we just take away the responsibility? And I'll take you along. Take a look at this average sausage. It has 80% meat, or maybe more even, and there are some spices, some herbs, some starches, just to make it a sausage. We can also make sausages with only 10% meat. So we fill up the rest of the sausage with plant-based protein that are more healthy and better for the environment. We could also make this kind of sausages, but then it is a plant-based sausage. And people will say, no, that's plant-based. They have this sacrifice feeling. But as soon as we put in just a tiny amount of meat, we can sell this as a meat sausage. And meat sausages are super nice, right? So if people would eat this kind of sausages the whole week, it would be the equivalent of eating only one sausage a week. And that's much better. If we do this, there's also more space for the animals because we need less, so it can be like animals that had a better life. And this is what a package for meatballs with the same concept could look like. I designed this package, and you just see a cow, nothing special. We could put a label on there saying, oh, it's better for the environment. But what we shouldn't do is this. This would be an honest packaging. But then people would still have this feeling like, oh no, I'm eating responsible, you know? That's not what people want. So we're going for the just super nice, meaty product. And then you can also think, people will discover what's happening. If they find out, they hear on the radio or wherever, oh no, this product only has like 10% meat, then they don't want it anymore. But it already happens. Not with meat, but a lot of products in the supermarket contain a lot of oil, a lot of fat, a lot of sugar and salt. And these ingredients are very cheap, are not so healthy, but they're really addictive. So people keep buying their products, and people, they think they get a lot of nutritional value from their product, but in fact, it's just as cheap as possible. So I found 8 deceptions in food packaging design. 8 ways in which producers trick people into buying food that is actually a lot different than what you think. I'm not going to tell about all of them, but I give a few examples. There's the appearance deception. You see it very often. If you look at this package of cranberry juice, you see cranberries on the top, cranberries in their hands, cranberries there, cranberries everywhere, but it's 80% apple juice. Of course, there are also laws that say you can't just put anything on any package. So, for example, juice is a protected name. You can only call something juice if it's juice. But then there are also tricks to work around this. This is not juice, this is nectar. So this is only 50% juice. And another example is this. It's a product for babies, and you want the best for your child. And it says, oh, there's all the good nutrients you need. But in fact, it has 1/3 of sugar. So you're just giving your child a lot of sugar, what you didn't expect. The last example is a bit more complicated, so I'll show you how this works. Because the ingredient list can tell you what you eat, right? Because you can't really trust the package, so you just read on the ingredient list what's in there. And the law prescribes that you have to put the ingredient that is the biggest amount available at the beginning. So here's an example of sugared nuts. And you see there's first sugar, and then there's all these nuts. Because these nuts are there in a smaller amount than the sugar. But if you look at this example, you'll see like, hey, the sugar has the biggest part in here. But if you add up all these nuts together, there's more nuts. So it doesn't feel really right to put sugar at the beginning. So that's allowed. You can put the nuts in front, and put between brackets what kind of nuts you have, and then put sugar to make it a more clear ingredient list. But the same law can also be used in the other way. This is an example of forest fruit filling biscuits. And they said, oh yeah, there is 40.4% forest fruit filling in there. And they put between brackets, there was sugar and there was only 0.3% forest fruit. So they used this trick to even make the ingredient list really deceiving. And of course, there are organizations looking at these tricks and making television programs. I'm sorry. and other stuff to show people what's going on. And even though they try, people keep falling for these tricks. And that's why I thought, let's use these tricks in a more positive way, because they apparently work really well. So let's get back to the package I showed earlier. I used the appearance deception, the product name deception, the composition deception, and the ingredient list deception. Because if you buy this product, you think you're buying meat. Looking at the ingredient list, you see 89% beef puree, and then there's 40% beef paste between brackets. And between brackets, it says that's 28% actual beef. So you have to bring a calculator to the store to find out the product is only 10% beef, and it's all perfectly legal. This is an example of hybrid meat, and we're already seeing hybrid meat. There's, of course, the salads and the croquette, and they have really small amounts of meat, but people still see it as a meat product. They like the product. They're not disgusted by the product because it's a meat product. So I feel we already know this, and people could get used to the fact that other products are also becoming hybrid. And there are some practical implications as well. When we are using this concept, we want to try to decrease the amount of meat. But it's only possible with processed meat, because this is a sausage, and a cow consists of multiple parts. And there's also these parts, and you can't really use the same trick. People will notice if it's a real piece of beef. But luckily, we eat a lot of processed meats in the Netherlands, and it mostly comes from milk cows and not from meat cows. Because we don't like milk cows that much for their meat, so they entirely become processed meat. Which means that if you want to decrease the amounts of cows, we should use the same concept also for dairy products. And that's possible. We can make yogurt with less milk, we can make ice cream with less milk. And it makes sense, because you don't have to read this all. If you look at the impact, beef has a lot of impact on the environment, but it's the cows that make the impact. So the cheese and the milk they're making also have a lot of impact. And for cheese, there's a bit of a thing, because Dutch people really love cheese. And there's a special law for cheese. You can't call cheese cheese if it's not cheese. But even for this problem, there are ways to work around it, because this is an already existing product. This is case, and it's almost cheese product, and they replaced some of the saturated fats for more healthy fats, and they just called it case. See at the design, nobody will notice that it's not called cheese. And I will end with the ethical implications, because I'm trying to deceive supermarket consumers to do good, but who's deciding what is actually good? Through history, people fought for their thing, what they thought was good. So can you actually be sure if you are good and if someone else is not good? And can you just trick people into your ideas? You can also say there are more sectors that have an influence on the environment, so why should we work on meat at all? And you can also say, if we're going to sell hybrid meat without telling people, we are just only slowing down this whole process. So it's actually at the end maybe worse for the environment. You can say it's inherently wrong to deceive, or maybe it's inherently wrong to do nothing. Because now the shift in mindset is going really slowly. And if people keep eating so much processed meat, it's not good for the health, it's not good for our society, and it's not good for the environment. I made an exhibition, it's already over now, and I asked people for their opinion on this topic. And I also like to ask you now, what do you think? Is it ethical to do this?
Very well, but first of all, you get a very big round of applause. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Yeah, by show of raising your hands, who says, yes, this is ethical? Who says no? No. And who says somewhere in the middle, the polder position, as we call in Dutch, still don't know? Well, let's sit here. Were you the Godver guy, by the way? Or? Oh, that was him. Oh, okay, that was the other guy. But you're somewhere in the middle. Explain.
Yeah, if it's allowed by the law, it's okay. But maybe when it's applied, how do you say it? then some people gonna protest against it, something like that.
But as I understand, Charlotte, everything you said is in the borders of the law. It's not illegal.
Exactly, it's all legal. It's just based on the examples that already exist. So that kind of proves already is legal. Otherwise, it wasn't there.
Yeah. So it's all legal, but it's a bit of cheating. But within the law, it's a bit of cheating within the law. What do we think then?
En er worden veel woorden gebruikt die iets anders suggereren. Light. Wat is light? Nou, dan denk ik, dat moet ik nemen. Nee, dat stelt niets voor. Biologisch stelt niets voor.
But the question is, those techniques, using those techniques, so it's indeed using words not, do you think it's ethical? That was the question.
Ja, oké. De ethical, it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, it's okay. Over here, you said?
I was in the middle, in between. And that is because, well, in the current situation, they're also deceiving us for the bad. So in that sense, currently I would say, well, as long as they're still doing that, we might as well deceive for the good as well. But maybe something should change overall in both ways. So we don't have to deceive anymore.
That's a good answer. Over here? What were you saying? Or was there something off topic? Yeah, okay. Oh, there's a list going on here. So how do you feel about it? Is it ethical?
Ik vind het niet ethisch verantwoord. Nee, want je bent eigenlijk gewoon als producent je consumenten voor de gek aan het houden. En ik vind het eigenlijk belachelijk. Maar,
He says it's ridiculous, it's not ethical, you're still cheating on consumers. Who says it is ethical? And why? Can you explain to that gentleman why you think it is ethical? Because we're cheating on people.
Is het oké te doen in Dutch?
Ja, sure.
Nou ja, het maatschappelijk belang. Ja. Want het gaat om het klimaat, om onze gezondheid, om de economie. Ja. En hetzelfde als voor sigarettenpakjes, daar kun je dus ook zo'n plaatje op doen. Ja. Maar dat heeft allemaal met onze gezondheid te maken, dus daarom.
It's because of the goal we want to achieve, the things we want to change, and therefore all means necessary. And are these more or less the same reactions as you got on those posters?
Yes, it's kind of the same. Many people really are angry about the deceiving that's already happening. So thereby they're kind of forgetting what it can mean for meat, because people are really a lot of times like, oh no, I'm deceived. That's just bad. And it's sometimes the same as a knife, I feel. You can use a knife to cook something nice, or you can use a knife to kill someone. And it's, on the user if it's good or not.
Yeah. And have you also tested this out in reality in supermarkets, like little experiments, if people actually pick it up, if they see that they're being cheated, or if they just accept it? Is that possible? Have you done that?
For me, it was not possible yet to test it, but I had an exhibition and I showed the packaging, and there were like a lot of posters with a lot of text where you could read about it. And some people didn't read all the text because it was in a library, so not everyone had time to read it. But people who didn't read the text, they just saw the package and they looked at it, and they didn't see I made it. They just thought it was an existing package, and they were like furious, like, oh wow, this product, I didn't see it at all, that it had no meat. So it looks like it would work.
Yeah, all right. I'm also curious, of course, what do you think about this? Because you told us we should inform people better, we should be honest about where our food is coming from, tell the real story, and now we hear someone saying, well, we might as well just cheat. You can use this microphone as well.
Can I? Well, I think it's basically two sides of the same coin, because I think the starter is to be more transparent about the way we are already being deceived now. I think people completely underestimate how much they are involved in climate changes by consuming, for example, and in industrial farming. And if there would be more transparency about the direct impact of what we're eating now on your health and the climate, I think people wouldn't mind to go to the 10%. And they would be less aversive to this way of deceiving, because they would see, wow, it's either way.
It wouldn't make us angry. You wouldn't get a backlash, like people then say, well, now I know that it's all cheating. I'm going to eat more meat.
Well, I think there's always a backlash of people. People don't like change. There is something with us, we just don't like change. But if the 10% would be the new standard, like the 6% apparently is with the croquette, I don't think people would get angry. I think they would just probably like what they eat.
Yeah, over there and over there. 2 questions, very good. I'll start here.
When I go to do my groceries, I don't take the time to read all ingredients. So I don't know whether it's 10% meat, whether it's 90% meat. How do you want people to get to read the ingredient list? Because I don't want to waste my time on doing so.
Well, maybe one of the solutions is simply not read it. We will cheat you in buying the right stuff. Or not?
Yes, that's exactly the point. There is an ingredient list on there because the law says it has to be there. And there are some people who do actually read. So that's why I put a trick in this list to also trick these people. But the people who don't read this ingredient list, it's fine because they just buy the product without. That's perfect.
Yeah. Maybe that is part of the solution. But a very good question. Your question or remark?
Well, I think that you're absolutely right. That there's a lot of misleading, and I would like to know what is on my plate. So that's why I think the misleading part is wrong. If you think about the question why the companies are misleading us, that's simply because they want to make more profits. They want to inject water and salt into your meat before they sell it, and then they sell water for the price of meat. So that's very lucrative. So they don't do it because of because they're concerned about the environment.
And now Charlotte is saying we should use exactly these techniques, but now for a good cause. Are you then agreeing with those techniques, or are you still saying it's a wrong technique?
I don't agree with the technique. I think that there should be transparency about what is on your plate, and you can choose if you want to buy meat. And it's on the package that suggests meat, I think it's wrong. I really don't understand why the vegans and the vegetarians call their products burgers or steaks. That's misleading as well.
Okay. That's misleading. That doesn't help. Oh.
It suggests that it's a meat related. Why would you call something a meat-related product?
Well, what if it would help? What if it would help us to eat less meat? What if it would help us to get a better, a cleaner planet?
Well, you can just be transparent about it. There's nothing wrong with that. Give it a new name.
Can I give an answer on this? Because in the Dutch culture, we have a very poor eating culture. But there is a culture, and it says for dinner we eat a piece of meat, some carbs like potatoes, and some vegetables, and that's like a 3 unit. And for people, it's really hard to design a meal without these 3 units. So if you can just say this product fits in this one of your 3 units that you need, it's really easy for people to make a meal. And I try to eat as much plant-based as possible. So some friends, they want to cook also for me a meal without animal products. But then they ask me, like, how do I do this? I don't know. I cannot just make you some potatoes and vegetables because that's not finished. So I think we really need some products that just fill this gap. And you can call them meat replacement, or you can say this is a burger, but you can...
But this gentleman says, don't call it a burger because it's not a burger, and then we're deceiving consumers. It's the wrong way.
I think a burger is not saying that it's meat. A burger means the shape, and it's telling you this is a replacement for the one of the 3 parts of your meal that you're looking for. And I think that is kind of useful.
Are we getting there?
No, we're not getting there.
I was trying, but not.
No, I don't think a burger is the shape. A burger is a product. You can buy it at McDonald's, and it includes a tiny bit of meat. I agree with that, and it's not healthy at all. So maybe you should not buy it. But a burger has a very specific meaning. If you sell gehaktballetjes and you spell it with CK, which is something the vegetarian butcher does. Then
one of the strategies of Charlotte.
That's one of the strategies. I completely disagree with that kind of strategy. Just give it another proper marketing name, and it will be all right.
And just to check, are you being paid by the food industry to tell us this?
No.
Just to be transparent about that as well. Yes, Charlotte, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think it's really nice to see there are different opinions about this trickery. Like, can you do this or not? Because I'm kind of now was saying, oh, but we need it. But I'm also just asking this question: can we do this? Because I had this idea that this is what we could do, but not what we should do maybe, because we first have to open the discussion about it, and then...
And we also go to our next guest to close this discussion for now, of course. So I also want to know and want to review, where are you in this discussion? Have you any of those, are you saying, yes, we should use these techniques, or are you saying we shouldn't, or are you in the middle, or do you say, I'm just a scientist here, I bring on the discussion?
Yeah, I feel a shift is mind shifting is needed, and it's just going too slowly. So I feel just as an in-between solution, we could do this for a couple of years until our society changed enough to go to the real solution, being transparent and having people choose themselves for a plant-based alternative.
Charlotte de Wit, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, on the posters and the announcement, you saw Remco Vogelzang as our next guest, but unfortunately he couldn't be here, and he sent one of us colleagues, and we're very glad that he did. So give a warm welcome to Hans Kakkenberg. You can stand here. Hello. Hans, welcome. And as I said, we're very glad that you're here. Remco couldn't make it. And so how does that work? He called you up and he said, you know, you have to go now, or?
We're sitting in the same office, and I'm responsible for the plant. I'm plant manager of the factory. Yeah. And he must go to a customer in England. That's why he said, okay, how can we do it? Because it's important. We say that we come, so no problem. I go to it. There's no problem because we do things together as a team, and when there is something to do, okay, we make the difference. No problem.
Very good, very good, and is he going by train to London in England? No. Oh, okay, let's skip that. We cut that out. Okay. And also, English is not your native tongue, and that's for a lot of people. So also for you, if you want to say something in Dutch, if you feel more comfortable, just say it in Dutch. Some people here have done it, and we will translate it. Let's start with introducing your company and what you're doing. And we have some slides, because what I have understood, but you can tell it a lot better, of course, your company made a transformation in about 10 years from a traditional butcher shop to a specialist in, I quote, quick, ready products, including a vegetarian line. Is that all correct information?
Correct, yeah. Correct, yes. Yeah. Yes, shall I take it? No. Okay. I think Bobeldijk in Deventer, for our parents, for example, you know them, started, I think, 40 years ago with a lot of butchers in Deventer and behind. And he started up with make the products in a factory for all them slaughters, for all the factories, for shops. Yeah. So they started, I think, 25 years ago in the way we are doing now. In the years they are coming, they say, okay, for us, how going to the future? And 10 years ago, it was a time for us, as a company, because we are not big, in the middle of it. How go we to the future? And the future for us, we say, okay, meat is for us not the future, because two things, already what said before, there are coming a lot of people in the planet, and when they all want to eat meat, we thought, it's not the way we want to go further, and that's where the moment we decided to go to planet.
And that's one reason, the planet. And was there also a reason, because the gentleman says you're a company, you want to make a profit? Was that also a reason?
Okay, we are a profit company, so we must make profit. Otherwise, we can't go investment for new products and for new volumes. But not the way the most important. The most important was, okay, how go we go into the future, and what for us as a company is the best way. And we thought meat is not for us the way. We must go to plant-based products.
And now I can understand, if you're a company with butchers, I mean, we already talked about consumers being hard to convince, and now you were telling all your employees, all the butchers, hey guys, we're going vegetarian.
No, not so easy as that, but and not so fast. Most important is, ook for a factory as us, we must listen to what the market wants. And it's also for meat, also for plant-based product, must listen. But when we say to ask for butchers for 10 years ago, how do you find the products we make now? And they, at that time they said, oh, we make rubbish. Because because 40 years ago, the products we make were totally different than the products we make 10 years ago and we make now. That was already a changing for them. But what we say to them is we make products what our customers want, what the market wants. And quality, and there's also a name, quality, what we find quality is not what we find quality. Quality is what the customer or the customer wants is quality.
And do you see, can we stand at that table? Don't worry. Is it a profitable market? Can you see that it's a growing market? Because we also heard some optimistic sounds, like more and more people. Do you see that as well?
This an enormous growing market. When we started 10 years ago, we started with only biological products based, because there was a lot of products in Holland for vegetarian. But not vegan and biological also not. That's why we started with biological. And now we are making for the most of it vegan, because we think vegan is the market in the future, and not veganism. Vegan, yes.
And because critics might say, if you look at your website now, I think you still have meat now in the factory. Is that true? So it's going to be banned completely?
Yes, but yeah. When we we have 10 years ago we started. We 3 years ago we split the factory. When one part of the factory is totally plant-based and one part is only meat, because we can start only with plant-based, because we must invest a lot of money, and when you have no customers, only a cost, then the banks say, okay, what do you want for your next year? And you don't get money anymore. Dus we used meat for investment, or for the profit we get, to invest in the plant-based factory part, and now the part of plant-based is I think over 80% and 20% meat, and I think by next year, perhaps when it's going good, we have only 100% plant-based. Yes, because that is our future, we think.
And are you an exception in the market? Are you? Well, we also talked about the vegetarian butcher, the vegetarische slager in the Netherlands. Are you an exception, or do you see that we get more and more competition, more and more butchers are following our way?
Yeah, butchers not so, but only the industry will follow us. We started with vegan, and that was new. Our market is most export, a little bit in Holland. But we thought vegan is the market, and what you see is that other big meat companies start also production, but they started mostly with vegetarian and not with vegan. And now the factories who make vegetarian, they also go to veganistic, because also they think that's the future.
And you must have discussions, as we had a discussion with Charlotte about marketing. Yeah. And I was, of course, and I think we're all wondering, are you using Charlotte's techniques? Are you sometimes, and we will keep it quiet here, we will stop filming now, but are you sometimes using these techniques to also, because it's easy to seduce vegan people, to buy vegan stuff, but you want to seduce meat eaters as well.
Yeah. Yes, but market things like that also, everybody use that, because that's the market. And when only one company doesn't do it, you have a problem for yourself. Dus you must do it, otherwise you have a problem.
Yeah. And can you give us an example of one of those techniques? What are you, for example, doing? How are you calling your products? How do you try to seduce the meat eaters into?
We are try to reach the vegetarian. That's for us the market. And when you have the vegetarian, it go out to the flexitarian.
Okay. And so how do you call out the flexitarian to eat more non-meat?
You must. We think you must reach them by the products to let them try them and taste them. Yeah. And when they are good, okay, then buy the next time. And when you give them you must do it, they don't must.
And now let's call in the argument of the gentleman sitting on the third row, the burger argument. Yeah. He says, I don't like it when, for example, a company like yours calls something a burger which is not a real burger as he defines it. How are you in that discussion?
Ja, ik denk, for example, the same discussion with, how do you say it in het gehakt in English, yeah. Of in Nederlands, yeah. Dutch. There was how do you say it in the...
Gehakt is meatloaf?
Meatloaf, yes.
Is it? Oh, sorry? Minced meat, sorry, thank you for that. So minced meat, the discussion about minced meat, if it's real or not.
Is it only for meat, or is it you can use for anything? Yeah. And judge said, okay, it's used for everything because you have minced vegetables. Yeah. That's why, and that's also what is a name? Is it for meat or is it for much more than that? And we think that a burger is a name for not only for meat, but only for more things. Let's say more that Charlotte said. It is the form. How you say it? Yeah,
the shape of, and it looks like a burger, so we call it a burger. And someone might think different about that, of course.
Same for a nugget. Is a nugget is that a
chicken nugget,
or is it a nugget the form of it?
Yeah. Do you then also spell the word kip or a chicken? Do you spell it a little bit different? Do you use those little tricks that the vegetarian butcher used in the Netherlands?
Nee.
Or is that company private information that
we have? Our name is our company name is Vitafit, and we have also behind it is fish and flesh. Well, fish and flesh spell it like something like that, with an eye to the meat eater.
Yeah, we see some techniques there. And a final question that might also be a dilemma for your company. You all know that this vegetarian butcher has been sold, the company, to Unilever, a big company that still uses a lot of meat, a lot of non-vegan food. Unilever calls you and makes an offer on the company.
Yeah. Well, we're not to sell.
You're not to sell, and has that to do with ethical reasons as well? That you say that company is not doing what we think is the future.
The vegetarian butcher is a marketing name. Yeah. The most products he didn't make by himself, and he has a good marketing strategy. Yeah. So he has sold the company. He has a lot of money, and we think we make products, good products. And we make by ourselves here in Deventer, and we believe in it, and not in only marketing but also in the products.
Okay. So Unilever, they can call, but
perhaps they offer a lot of money, but we don't think so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Questions from the audience for Hans? Oh yeah, you can give him a round of applause as well. Thank you very much. Questions or remarks for Hans? Those things you want to know or share? Yes.
I have a question. You said at one point that if we're the only company not using these tricks, then we will be left out. But you could also look at it completely the other way around. Like if you're the only company being completely transparent, that could also be a unique selling point. Have you ever considered doing that?
You can be the one company that's being transparent, that's being honest, and Teun van der Keuken will love you. And
when you're going to do it, you want to try to do that, you must have a lot of money for marketing, because you must go to press or something like that, and you are making a statement, and we don't have that money, and that's why we can't do that. You must.
But he might think, well, but if you do this, you have free marketing, because all those hip influencers, all those vegan, they will say, oh, this is the first company, buy their stuff.
Yeah. So we started with vegan, also for a way to do it right with the organizaties. Also, we sell a lot of in Germany. And in Germany, you have also a big, belangenvereniging for veganisten. Yeah. And we have a very good relation with them, because we have good products, and we want to sell them by them. Yeah. And that the customer goes to the retailer and said, I want to have that product. And that's
fair enough. That's a different way of marketing, but good point. Thanks for that. Any other questions or remarks, things you want to know, things you want to share? All the way in the back, yes? That's one way of staying healthy for me. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's kind of a remark about the product. I work for the International Business School, and recently I went to India. And this discussion brings me to the thought that maybe we should start with educating maybe the young children. I'm just thinking,
start or stop?
No, start, because let's say at the school, right? Let's say they don't know anything about burgers. They don't know anything about meat. Let's give them just plant diet based. Now, isn't that the best way to actually have a sustainable population that eats, let's say, in a way that the world needs, instead of other ways, like what we are discussing now? I'm questioning, well, I'm putting on the forefront the education of children from a very, very early age. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. I see you not yet. It's a long way over here. Yes.
I think you are right. It started with education and started with what I also said this before. We must learn the children what is food. I've said it in some articles before in newspapers when I was interviewed. But the most people here eat, and they don't know what they eat. And the most important is that we realize what we are eating. And when we realize what we're eating, then we can decide, okay, is it plant-based, is it meat, to start with. That's one thing. Other thing is that, but every year we get the children from school in Twello for the ROC. They come to us and they show them around. That children from 40 years old, and to make a decision what they want in the future, and we let them laten taste them. Yeah, some products. From meat-based on plant-based, also insect-based.
And blindfolded, like they can, like we saw in the film.
Are blind, of course, because otherwise they know what they're going to eat. And
do you see that helps?
Yeah, because everybody eats and they don't know what they eat. They don't ask what they eat. And afterwards we say what they eat. And ook by insects, for example, somebody goes to the toilet because
they say gadver.
Something like that, yes.
But they do that after they've eaten it. So while they're eating it, they're all fine with it. Oh, it's like a chicken nugget. But
that's the biggest problem.
So it's something in their minds that makes them vomit.
We must realize what we eat. And the parents before, they were more with food. They know what the food was, and what for our purpose was, for our body.
Yeah, thanks. And also Charlotte and Roanne, could you come forward as well? Because of course we also want to go to, how do you call it, some kind of conclusional, and what would be our next step. But first, of course, also a reaction to the story of Hans that you've just heard, because he uses some of your techniques. You must be very happy with a company like this.
Yes, yeah, of course. I'm super happy with more plant-based products. Yeah. But my trick is not yet used. Like they're really honest about what they sell, right? You say, I'm giving you a vegan burger. And I think that's super nice. Yeah. I feel we still have to discuss about my theory, if we should use it or not. Yeah. But the first step is, of course, the availability of plant-based products.
Could there be some kind of that you would invite Charlotte to come and talk about your marketing, but then in a little dark room, and not that we're all not there, but to use a different technique, because it might work better to convince, especially those meat eaters, to buy a product.
Yeah. The best way is to discuss it with our marketing department. Yeah. They have more experience and to do something with.
But can we arrange that? To invite her for a cup of coffee in Deventer? We're doing business now. Yeah, very good, very good. What do you think of the story of Hans?
Well, it's interesting, and it's interesting to see that, the veganistic kind of growth. Yeah. Veganism is now one of the fastest growing social movements around in the world. And you see that with companies as well. So you see now that the biggest meat producers are buying in. They are the ones often investing in the veggie world. And the same with the milk and dairy industry. They are the ones investing in the nut milks, right? And so this is really happening.
Let's try to talk to the audience. But one other question before we go to Hans.
We get a new problem at this moment, because we produce a lot of, not only us, but a lot of companies. So the raw material is a problem. And because we want materials Europe, and not from other sides of the planet, because we don't GMO free, and a lot of raw material in other part of the world are not GMO free, and that's a problem for us as producers.
Understand that. Is there also a representative here from Saxion Hogescholen? Is er een vertegenwoordiger van Saxion Hogescholen? I was wondering. Oh yeah, I'm just curious because I was walking here. I'm just how do you call that, a bystander, and we talk about how to make it more attractive to consumers, and you can start that on a hogeschool as well. And it's also the decisions you make. And I saw when I walked in, there's here a little Albert Heijn to go, one of those little convenience store. And one might say with a critical view that because I heard it's just opened, that's an odd choice, because one of those convenience stores is full of meat and is full of wrong choices, so to say. And I don't know if you have anything to do with that Albert Heijn to go, but I was just curious and wondering about it. Are you wondering exactly the same thing?
Yeah, I'm wondering myself as well, and I have nothing to do with that.
No, you're not the decision maker. But it's
everyone else. I don't know if someone of my colleagues knows.
Because you're can I say you're a teacher here, or?
Yes, I'm a sort of teacher.
Sort of teacher, but I'm curious because we can talk about the whole world, but we can also, of course, talk about the Saxion here. What, when everything that you've heard, you think is something that Saxion Hogescholen, for example, can do to make a difference?
I don't know, but we hope, of course, that Albert Heijn will change as well in the near future. Yeah. So everything what's said today is, of course, has also to do with the big companies, because it's only staying small, then nothing will happen.
Thank you very much. And that's the same question I have for you. Let's try to make it small now. Mm-hmm. Let's try to think about a small community here as an educational. And for example, they made a choice for whatever reason to have an Albert Heijn to go. And we see a lot of products that we might think, well, that's maybe not the right product. What can we do? Should we throw them out? Should we try to sit with them and make a different product? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think throwing out is the way to go. I mean, I had to go.
Yeah. Very good.
No, I think
well
instead,
noticed.
I mean, it's the same as, you know, if you notice that you're distracted with social media, what are you going to do? Step out of the world and be like, I never want to have that again? That's not realistic. But instead, what you could do is just opt for the plant-based meals that they do have, or the plant-based options that they have. The more people will do that, the more options there will be. In my book, I predict that McDonald's in 15 years from now only has plant-based options. They will still serve the McCricket, perhaps, but that will be it. That's not fantasy. That's actually what their managers are saying. So the issue is not so much throw McDonald's out of the world. The issue is how to create more plant-based options within what we have.
Very good. Charlotte, for you the same question?
I agree with it. And coming back to what I just proposed, we can still sell a chicken wrap, but we can just put in a tiny bit of chicken and nobody will taste the difference. So that could be.
And I was so hoping that one of them would say, we should kick Albert Heijn to go out, get Hans in. You have convenience stuff as well.
Our products, you can sell it by Albert Heijn, so it's better than they go also in the to go here.
Yeah. But are your products in the to-go line already or not?
No. Only
is that possible? Is that, I don't know how that works.
For us, absolutely. But Albert Heijn and all the other retailers decide what they are selling, and not we have to decide what they're selling.
Very good. There's a lot of laughter going on here. I'm always just curious. What were you laughing about, or was it something completely?
Nee, dat was wat anders.
Dat was even wat anders. Oké, nee, heel goed. Ja, a question over there. John.
Yeah, I don't know how to formulate it, but I must say something. These deceptive methods in marketing, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I would be very, very careful because they really do not match with what you're trying to do as a business. And if your product is transparent and is trying to do the good thing, then your marketing should be the same way, your communication. And it seems kind of like the doel heiligt de middelen, and even though the idea is good, you give away your biggest weapon, which is transparency, which is kind of like having the high ground. And think long term. Don't try go for the short term run. And I get the ideas of needing investment and stuff like that, but stay with the core, and I had to say that.
Very good. What's your first name, if I may ask?
Mark.
Mark. So when you have that conversation, you should have Mark on one shoulder, saying this to you, and then Charlotte on the other.
I say something about it. You can also say how far you can go with it. For example, when you see our products, they started with the list with water. I think, okay, you buy and you eat water. That's the quit list. There's also a producer in Holland. They started with, how we say it in English, but gehydrateerd soja. And that's yes, and that's something else that seems that read very good, because you think, okay, it's 70% soya, and we say, okay, it is 50% water, for example, and 20% tarwe. That's something different.
Yeah. So there is Mark, there's Charlotte, but there's also a gray area somewhere in the middle. Finally, also for you, do you want to say something to Mark?
Yeah, I think I agree that the best solution is always change people's minds, change behavior. So my opinion is that that's what we should go for. And now I found a solution for the in-between, and I'm still spreading the word to discuss it. So I don't know if we should do it or not.
Very good, and thanks for that remark. Do you have anything to say, or have you said anything?
Well, just one tip. I was interviewing Jonathan Safran Foer the other day, who is a writer and a activist, and he just wrote a beautiful new book, We Are the Weather, on climate changes and going vegan. And I think he had a very good advice for everybody who finds it really difficult to eat less animals. And he said, well, then just don't become a vegan, but try to eat plant-based until dinner, for example. Just exchange 2 out of 3. And that is doable for a lot of people. And I find that once you get used to a new way of cooking or shopping even, it becomes easier. So, you know, if you're not able to kind of exchange everything, then taking tiny steps is already really, really helpful.
Thank you very much. Also, I hope for everyone that this session was also really helpful. I thank you for all your information and your inspiration, and thank you for all your questions. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. And we hope to see you back next time. Thank you.